Okay. So thank you everyone for being on this call. As we know from our governor's conference, the Equal Rights Amendment is still weaving its way through the federal government, but we in New York have an opportunity to push that forward within the state of New York, our Constitution. There's a referendum on the ballot that's appearing this November that will put the equal rights of all citizens, enshrining it in our Constitution. So we have here tonight Nia Alvarez-Mapp, who has spoken with the Club of Westchester and the Club of Brooklyn also, right? I think that's where we found her. And she's going to speak to us tonight about, she's with New Yorkers for the Equal Rights Amendment, and they're doing a launch as of March 21st to let people know that this referendum is coming up in the November election. It's on the back of the ballot, which is always a challenge. And oddly enough, there is opposition to having all citizens having equal rights enshrined in our Constitution. So they have a toolkit. She'll talk more about it, but for all of us Zontians on the line, it's important that we partner with our like-minded organizations. And it's important that we uplift this initiative as we get closer to the election cycle so that people know, no matter who they're voting for or what they're voting for, that they turn the ballot over and they vote yes. And so that's why we are partnering with them as much as we can. And we'll hear more about some of the tools that they have. So we're not reinventing the wheel, but that we are well-versed so that when we talk to our friends and our neighbors and our Zonta allies, that they too can be inspired and help uplift this issue. So Nia, please take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for doing that wonderful introduction. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for having me and to talk to you all about ways that the Zonta Club can really get involved for this referendum. My name is Nia Alvarez-Mapp. I am the organizing director for New Yorkers for Equal Rights. It is a ballot measure campaign that is happening for this year's election where people are supposed to flip the ballot to vote into the Equal Rights Amendment. So for those who do not know what the Equal Rights Amendment as a whole is, the Equal Rights Amendment is this referendum that was done by the Capitol twice around, where now we as New Yorkers have to vote to see if we would to add explicit protections, not only just for race and religion, but also things such as ethnicities, national origins, age, disability, sex, including their orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy and pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy. So essentially protecting someone's physical bodily autonomy and identity, essentially. And we've been partnered with wonderful people like you all, but also our major folks that have been in a collaboration with us from the very beginning have been Planned Parenthood, New Yorkers for Immigration Coalition, New York Civil Liberty Union, New Pride Agenda, National Institute for Reproductive Health, NAACP New York, Make the Road, and 1189, and New York State United Teachers. So the teachers union, so we're trying to get all labor, reproductive justice, civil rights organizations to be part of this as well, which also now includes you guys because you're part of a long list of coalition partners and members such as Legal Women Voters and Indivisible. So to sort of going back into Lisa's point, I wanted to, if you wouldn't mind, I just want to give you guys something in perspective to think about as we talk about this. I'm going to share my screen really quickly to give like a viewpoint, if that's okay with everybody. Can everyone see it? Can I get a thumbs up?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So the reason why wanted to give that a little bit of a background is because one, New York State isn't particularly well known for ballot measure campaigns, and especially when it comes to ballot measures with opposition. So our path to victory, which what we thought would be best for us, is to leave our state better than we found it, build a big inclusive coalition with people such as yourself, but partners who may be working together especially partners who may be working together for the first time, creating meaningful change because people have to really get used to the idea of what direct democracy is. So basically this ballot measure referendum. And again, the optimism that when this bill gets passed, this is a first in its kind bill. So with this encouragement, mainly may push it into a more national framework, especially for the ERA that is going now into federal level. So bigger picture as to why we're talking about this. In the 2020 election, New Yorkers, 8.5 million New Yorkers voted. We assume there's going to be similar turnouts, but even more, including newly registered people and those who may be coming into the state. So as we see right here, our highest estimate is 9.2 million people. That also includes into coalition of regions. So recognizing that this is a statewide coalition, but also we cannot neglect, as we've seen in past elections and past work, the downstate vote with numbers such as 18% for Long Island, 14% for Mid-Hudson, which is mainly your guys' area, and New York City being the largest, 37. This also going to the understanding that this is going to be 1/3 of our winning coalition will be people of color. So really creating a diverse section for us to really understand the gravitas of the situation, and also reflecting that this is going to be an inclusive amendment for everybody. And as well as recognizing that this is a human right, not a political right. So this is a widely supported a ballot measure and bill, but really making sure we do that outreach. As we see here with based off of party lines, everyone's in like at least the 20% and above, right? So like they're in the 0.25%. And then also keeping in a glance that retention is super important. As we see, this is what happened in the 2020 November election. This was the turnout. This is what we suspect our general guesstimate of how each area reflects on those opinions of this particular ballot measure. So blue represents automatic support, doesn't really need to question. We just need to motivate them to get out to vote. Yellow is a more persuasive line. So we really got to have that talk and making sure that disinformation. And in red, challenge means like those who may not particularly support us, but not to neglect them, but really a lot of mitigating negative thoughts and feelings about the amendment based off of whatever they heard or polarization that's happening in that particular area. And understanding that we need to get people to get out the vote. Base areas and territories is to remind folks about the ballot. Understanding that these particular margin areas didn't succeed, not because people didn't care, it's just people did not come out to vote. So really honing in on the feelings that we need to get people to vote, as we've seen in the 2021 election when it came to the voting rights ballot measure, where there was a 30% that did not turn over their ballot and did not vote for the ballot proposal. So whether if they came, because most likely there's always a 50% drop, a 12% drop off, really 12 to 50% drop off, where people will go, they flip over the ballot, the legalese of it all, they don't really understand it and they don't feel comfortable voting on it. So really honing in that message to get people aware that this is something that you probably should vote on. And as compared to one with opposition, or not opposition, but those who were heavily vested against the ballot measure, there was even less of a drop off because people voted no against it, based as we've seen at the Constitutional Convention that happened in 2017. And again, recognizing that a lot of the drop off came from those who are most likely going to support the ballot measures that were happening because of the lack of understanding or lack of conversations that was taking place to get out and motivate them to vote. We've seen these shifts happening within these past years. There has been a huge major shift in regards to voting and getting out the vote in particular areas. Excuse this. With also a slight turnout based off of motivation. So Long Island has a lot of motivation to get out the vote, as we see with the Tom Suozzi election. So making sure that folks are being, again, motivated not only to be aware, but also motivated to actually get up, go out to vote, and also seeing that there's a drastic drop in the areas that we've just been recently talking about in New York City and New York City suburbs, which is mainly the Mid-Hudson and Long Island areas. And then with swing, most swing areas in this year is particularly based off our battleground areas and states. So when there's like perfect example, what recently happened between Tom Suozzi and Mozzie Phillips, that was considered a battleground area. There's going to be, I believe, 3 to 4 now, where those are particular areas are swing because there's just so many independent voters that need to be have a general understanding of what the ERA is supporting, and then going into deep dives into having these conversations with them. So I wanted to show you guys this, and why I wanted to bring up the March 21st launch. We are currently now in this process. If you see the blue parts is to represent the campaign overall. So this is just represents the campaign timeline overall for a general understanding. Blue represents the political ecosystem and climate. Orange, yellow represents like the research and polling, like the research and language that we're practicing to do to give the people to say things. So for these teachings that I'll talk about soon. Green is like the big inflection points that may or may not switch people's sides or may get people more motivated or not, or maybe just put things into places in consideration to understand the gravitas, such as the Meath oral arguments and the end of the Meath and SCO decision. So Meath is currently where the Supreme Court could overturn and ban abortion pills, essentially. Or like those type of birth control pills that can go into a harder part, so making it more difficult for women, especially if they are life-saving medicine, to need that particular abortion. And then it's not 25 days anymore, so I will delete this, but we are hosting, the campaign as a whole is hosting on March 21st, an anchor event to really launch our field outreach planning for all of our supporters. Basically, we had the messaging and we want to make sure you guys, oral coalition partners, get accumulated to have a general understanding, to talk about the amendment without particularly the ballot measure being there. I mean, without the big being there. So basically, essentially, if someone from the Zonta Club, like if Joan, for example, wants to go out and do this presentation or just talk about it, Joan to feel, we want to make sure Joan is comfortable to have a full discussion and have a general understanding about what the campaign is, and to talk to people around their neighborhood and even some places even further down the corner, as well as defining recruiting people, getting people to be more engaged, and to really motivating more folks to come out, with involving all the like the toolkits, lawn signs, and the things that we mostly associate campaigns coming in at that time as well. So what does that mean and what we need to do with all that? So we're trying to reproduce the numbers from past elections, mitigate negative regions that may deter people from coming, running up the scores in New York City and major surrounding areas and counties. Again, not neglecting the other areas that we haven't mentioned, because we are trying to do a full statewide campaign, but also making sure focusing on persuasive areas within the Hudson Valley and Long Island, so that they are more swayed on our side, than instead of listening to polarization that's happening across the states. And that's why we are talking about the launch right now. So reason why, as I mentioned earlier, we talked about the launch. There was a soft launch we did in June. We're now doing a very public campaign launch to uplift and strengthen our coalition and recruit more volunteers in a more, not drastic, but in a more vocal way of understanding, right? We want to make sure everyone's fully aware. We want to make sure those who want to be involved can get involved and know that we are open and showing the people power, that we are a grassroots coalition organization and campaign, to show that everyone has the right and say to the table. So tactics on this is to really show our multitudes of coalition partners to sign in and become coalition partners and have that conversation. So for example, I added Joan and Lisa to the coalition. So getting more people to join this list server to be aware about the campaign. And then also host teach-ins. So what this is mean is that if you were to sign up, or if there's activities you want to do to talk to people about work that's being done, we will train you to have these conversations, right? We'll train you how to talk to voters. We'll train you how to talk to people. We'll train you how to talk to your neighbor, even to your neighbor's Republican uncle or Democratic or overly invested uncle. And whether it be in person, virtual, or hybrid, to really get people to know about what's going on, and to also give the materials out, and then also to spread the message, spread the good news, as my church calls it, right? To get an overall readiness for folks to really go from a more relational organizing to more persuasive and grassroots organizing when you come think of a regular voting education or just general campaigning. So again, emphasizing the point that right now we're at a point where we're trying to encourage all our coalition partners to start with relational organizing and then branch off into overall campaign work, overall campaign volunteer work, so that they can feel comfortable about explaining what the ballot measure is, and then also try to get as many people as motivated as possible to be a part of what's going on, to have a general understanding about this bill.
Perfect. Thank you, Nia, for that. If you could put in the chat, the link to New Yorkers for the ERA, so that we can share that. I mean, I have it, but if you put it in the chat, then
Sure.
when
I'm
the
also
recording
gonna
goes out, it will go with it as well.
I'm gonna share both the website and as well as the event registration form.
Great. And hi, Bev. Thank you for joining us. Bev is with Power Her New York, and as a fellow Westchesterite, so I'm happy to see that she's on the call. So, ladies, we, like I started the saying, we have partnerships. Hey, Bev. We have partnerships with in our communities, and certainly throughout the spring and summer, there are lots of community events, whether it's the farmers market or whether it's the arts fair, or the summertime festivals that we are also happy to see once the weather gets better. And these are the places and spaces where we have an opportunity to ask for a table, and to provide information not only about registering to vote or about domestic violence resources, but also about this initiative. And we should try and incorporate that as much as possible in our outreach that we normally do in the community. So, this summer we have, scholarships coming up for the Jane and Klausman. We normally do our outreach in the spring with the colleges and such. We should also make sure that we are bringing uplifting this in our communities if possible. And we all have friends who belong to the Rotary or the Lions or whatever. And when they if they invite you to one of their meetings, because that's what we do in New Rochelle, we all invite each other to each other's meeting. You should bring this up as well. And then last but not least, we and again, I know it's different in different communities, but there's always citizens to be heard, both at the county level and at the local city and village level. Every once a month, there's always an opportunity for your average citizen to speak to their elected officials. And again, if within your comfort level, there's nothing wrong with going and speaking about this referendum coming up and encouraging everyone to be aware of it and to flip the ballot. So does anyone else have any thoughts on how we can be useful allies in this effort?
Well, I was thinking that, oh, go ahead.
And I just really want to emphasize the part of Lisa's point. We really want to meet you where you are, right? We recognize people in New York State haven't particularly done ballot measure work before, and we just want to make sure that folks have a general acclimation and just feel more accustomed to what the message is being said about this ballot measure. So any way and form in which we feel like we can help you, and vice versa, any way you feel like we can best help you, let us know and talk to me about it, because I'm happy to be accommodating in that front. But yeah, I'm going to go back to Joan.
Oh, no, I was going to say, Nia, I, as you know, printed out your PowerPoint when you came to our group and tried to study it, but I'm interested in the teaching just to be a little bit more expertise about it. And I know this is small, but there's a women's club, Bronxville Women's Club and Scarsdale Women's Club. And I had the idea that I would approach them just to fill them in. And a couple of the colleges that are nearby, Sarah Lawrence and Concordia, we went there once, a group of us from Zonta, to try to get them interested in some things. But I know when I was a college professor, a lot of my students had opinions, but they didn't vote. And I used to have to jab them about that. Don't complain if you're not voting. Get informed and do something. So that's another thing the local colleges here, we can do a little bit, but I'm interested in the teaching. And I'll talk to you more about that.
Pam, go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, I belong to another part of Zonta where it's people from all over the United States called the USA Caucus. And we had someone who came and talked to us about the federal ERA amendment. So when you're talking to people about New York State, what is the impact of doing this as well as getting it federally? Is there any joint impact? Are we working together with these people, or this is just, I mean, I understand it's a state ballot measure and it's been put on the ballot, but there's been a lot of talk about a federal resurgence as well, trying to get it passed federally. And if it gets passed federally, then these efforts are kind of moot because federal will be superior. So how does that juxtapose with what you're doing? Because people might ask me, it's a little bit confusing. So I want to be able, if I'm going to participate, how to separate the two or put them together as necessary.
Right.
So it's a yes and question to that, right? The federal ERA doesn't have the explicit additional things that we're also including into the protections, such as age, disability, and gender identity, gender expression. And also it doesn't explicitly in the full context talks about overall reproductive justice and rights. So that's
Okay.
one difference. Second
So
difference,
it's much more specific than the one for federal, which the states are allowed to do.
I would even argue like it's a little bit more broader because we're actually opening it to more people within our
Well, I
within
guess
the
it's how you interpret the law. You know,
Yeah.
it's more of a interpretation. And when you have a federal law, states can be more specific. They can't be less than what the federal is. Does that make sense?
Yes. And then also a part of it as well, what we're trying to be mindful of is that state rights are still very much prevalent within every region right now. With everything that's going on within the Supreme Court and all these bills that may or may not be passing, it's always a greater guarantee to have it within the New York State Constitution.
Okay.
That can also be an additional surplus if a federal ERA does get passed. So it's just an extra complement.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear that it's supplementing, not supplanting,
No.
I guess you'd say. Okay. Great. Thank you.
And I had a question. So if there really is more of an effort on the federal, but it doesn't get, any traction, that's not going to have any real implication on the New York State one, right?
No,
there's no relationship really.
No, when we voted in, it's only going to be within New York State jurisdiction. It won't be under the federal. Now,
Right.
What the optimism is that because this got passed in New York and people can look at it when the legal implications, there could be arguments made that they could try again in national or try again in other states within the United States because of how brand new and like innovative this particular amendment is.
Yeah. Have you, in the polling, what are the key issues in terms of opposition? Have you gotten to that at this point and messaging around that?
So that's always, I think a part of it is like it's always in the works. Main points of opposition right now, it's also going back to the opposition campaign, has been transgender LGBTQ rights. Immigration is always going to come up eventually. And again, it's just, but to be honest, to not even focus on that point for us and for all those who support, it's really for our messaging is the lack of urgency within New York State, right? New Yorkers feel very, very complicit and complacent that we are always going to have these protections forever. And, and like I said earlier at the Zonta Club meeting, I'm grateful that I'm in New York, but I'm also very cautiously aware that can easily change. As we saw with a very pro-life, very non-women friendly particular governor that almost won New York State by 6%, almost, like it was a very close tie. So our rights can be easily taken away. So, and I said this and I say this again and again, people come and go, but policies are forever. I rather have these protected policies now that protect our rights than have to rely on some person who we elect in every 4 years and someone's policy can easily change over that.
And this is a constitutional amendment, so that even has greater weight by not just, it'll be harder to change in the future once it's a constitutional amendment to the state, as opposed to just some kind of bill in the state or something like that, correct?
Yes, the Constitution holds over the statutories that we currently have.
Correct.
Right.
And in fairness,
may-
it took 2 years. It took 2 years back to back for this to even get to this ballot. And it will take
Right.
another 4 if it doesn't pass. If we have to do it all over again, you know, as we found with the voting rights that failed. You know, it's a lot of, it's a lift for our state senators to put this out. And the least that we can do is turn over the frickin' ballot. You know, that's the very least of it. Diane, you had something, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, did I hear right that you're going to have a march? Or
So in March, having a,
where is that? Some of my club members might be able to attend if it's local.
in March, we are having a anchor launch in New York City, but what we're really encouraging you all to do, and again, which is why I really want to highlight the form that I put in the chat, is for you all to have your own form of events around that timeline to get people in your particular areas to come and support wherever they are. And then and to reverse it backwards, so let's say you guys do register for an event. What we're planning to do is train you before that event happens with the digital assets and tools within this teaching, so you can talk to the people who come to your event to also help them spread the word and have a better understanding of the ballot measure.
That sounds good.
Okay.
So we may want to have you back to the Power group. And we could either do, how long is the training? About how many, is an hour or 2 hours?
Like an hour.
Okay, so we may want to have you come just to the whole network meeting, which, you know, will be about 30, 40 people, but from very different groups, you know, including Zonta, of course, but also AUW, League, you know, a lot of grassroots groups. And that could be really a good opportunity to train, you know, a sort of broader group of people. And then each of them could actually do something in terms of, you know, something close to March 21st.
So
Sorry.
Nia, if you want to put your contact information, because I know Bev has it, Mary, but I'm not sure if you do. So Nia, if you want to put your contact information in the chat so that you guys can connect together.
Yes, no, totally. And again, it's really the whole component of us having these events is for you guys to start empowering your people, because you guys know your people best. Like a part of it is making sure everyone is motivated, making sure everyone's getting ready to get out the vote, making sure everyone's ready to go and help flip the ballot. So we want to get people trained as early as possible, which is why we're asking people if they want to do something around that March 21st timeline. So it doesn't have to be exactly March 21st, it could be before and after, to register. And then we'll start doing those trainings to get people more engaged. And then so you can do it.
Right. But your point is that you want to do the training earlier so that people can participate around March 21. Is that correct?
Yes. So when you register, we're going to begin the trainings on March 4th, the week of March. So like
that's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had another question. We are planning a summit probably mid-October, possibly September, mid-October. And we're originally going to really focus on, you know, ballot initiative. But, you know, we're also assuming that by then things will be really far along. Do you have any sense what might be some of your concluding at that point? It's really sort of the, you know, a month before or even a few weeks before the election. Do you have any sense what could be most useful at that point? I mean, this is going way down the line, but I just wanted to mention it.
Let me just, okay, Mary, if you wouldn't mind, Bev, if you wouldn't mind if I just sort of repeat, what I'm hearing is like, you wanted to have a summit initially in October, but you feel like it will be more, but you're trying to figure out if there's another time to do it.
No, we will be doing a summit. And
yeah. I'm asking, like, are you saying you want to do it a little bit more earlier, or is like
no, she's saying there's October summit. She wants to know what will your ask be? Will it be education? Will it be get out the vote? What would be the most helpful thing if they have you on their agenda as part of their summit, which was fabulous.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Helpful. I would say at that time October, all our minds are just going to be get out the vote, get out the vote,
That's what I
Starting
figured.
mid-July, we're going to be doing a lot of get out the vote campaigns where it's going to be a little bit more heightened up in our approaches of how we're going to talk to people. So at that time, it'll be very much a get out the vote of the ERA.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
All right. I had said this was going to be short and sweet, and it's certainly been short and informative. So I thank everyone for participating. My Zonta friends, we will be talking about this throughout the summer. Our Zonta year ends at the end of June, so there'll be a new governor, but who's not from New York, but we're still going to take up this this issue and among the clubs and with the new area director who was at your presentation, Nia, with the Club of Westchester. So we're going to definitely keep this going, even though names and faces titles will change, names and faces will stay the same. So thank you again. Thank you, Mary, for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, Joan and Diane, and spread the word, and we'll keep each other informed and inspired and get this really going. So, okay, good night, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.